Welcome back, everybody. Good morning. It is Saturday morning, and this is Multifamily Unplugged. And if you weren't awake, that music will be enough to give you a jolt in the arm, right? Hey, if you're new to the show, welcome. Glad that you're here this morning. And just thank the person that did invite you, because I think you'll want to buckle up this morning for this morning's event, because I think we're going to bring some good content and information that's going to help you in your investing journey. So whether or not you are a new real estate investor, a new multifamily investor, keep in mind that coming up October 17th and 18th, and mark your calendars for this, my 5th annual Multifamily Summit. Hey, this virtual event, we're going to go 2 days. We have so many speakers and panelists this year that we are going right through from 9 to 5 both days. No lunches. We're going to do working lunches, no breaks. So all filled with content. VIP experience is going to put you in some private networking events with the speakers and panelists. But this year we have great guests on our show. So we're going to have Neil Bawa, who's going to talk about the markets. We're going to have Karin Hall, who's going to talk about IRA investing. We're going to have Matt Faircloth, who has over $1 billion in assets under management. Vina Jetty, $1 billion in assets under management. You know, our stage is packed this year with top-notch multifamily investors. You're not going to want to miss this year's event. It is October 17th and 18th. Go to multifamily24.com and get registered for that event. You're not going to want to miss this year. Okay, my guest this morning, I'm super excited because I was talking to him before the show about what he does, and I think that he's got a vehicle that's going to be helpful in lieu of doing 1031s. So Brett Swarts with Capital Gains Tax Solutions from St. Augustine, Florida. Let me bring Brett in real quick. Brett, good morning.
Mike, thank you for having me. How you doing? Good morning.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So how humid is it in St. Augustine this morning?
You know, the June, July, August seems to be the worst. Yeah, we're mid-July right now, so it seems to be tough. But I came from California, where we had fires and we had a lot of heat we lived in Sacramento mostly, and so I actually would take the humidity over the fires and the dry heat at this point.
That's funny. I'm in Huntington Beach, and you can be pretty consistent at 72 and sunny most of the day.
Perfect there. Yeah, San Diego, Huntington Beach, the Bay Area. That's the beautiful California weather. Sacramento has some beautiful weather too at times, but it can be very, very hot. Not as great on the coast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny because we can go, 10 minutes inland from where we are, and all of a sudden it's a 20-degree difference. So,
yep.
It's kind of interesting being along the coast. I've always wanted to be out here and moved out here this year, and just kind of love it. So it's great. So Brett, I always start my show with one question. I like to ask my guests, and I always say I'm going to write a book on this because I get so many diverse answers. But in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
I would say faithful, so faithful to the calling and the purpose I've been given in this life, to my family, as a father, as a husband, and then faithful to serving my clients at the highest level that we can with what we're doing here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions.
That's awesome. Probably one of the first people that has said that word, and I probably have about 300 of these under my belt. So I love that. Do you think that you grew up that way, that was something, being faithful is something you adopted early on, or did you grow into that over time?
I think you learn from people's mistakes and you learn from people's, successes. Growing up, my parents were divorced at a young age, and dad wasn't as faithful to mom as he could have been. And that created a kind of a big turning point for me as a youngster to be, loyal and connected and faithful. Love my dad, and we're connected well, but people make mistakes on things, and things can have consequences. And so I knew at a very young age that I wanted to be, financially and, especially successful, to not have the intensity of pressure of wealth coming between families and relationships. And so, growing up in the Bay Area, that's what we did. My dad and mom built houses, and all the money, they were very wealthy and stuff. And the parents got divorced. And when that happened, dad didn't really pay the child support. So he wasn't as faithful paying the child support. And so, I'd go to dad's house and we would, have a lot of fun. I mean, the Harleys, the boats, worked really hard, I love my dad, but he didn't pay any money to mom. We went to mom's house and it was tough. Right. And so, but looking back, it was good because it instilled in me a grit and resilience, to be faithful and my relationships, and then working really hard. And dad taught me to work really hard too. So it's not all bad things, but that's something that's always stuck with me for sure, to be very faithful in what I'm doing.
Yeah. Awesome. I think it's a great core value for sure. No doubt about that. So I love the word you just said, resilience. The name of our capital company is Resilience Equity. And, I think that we all have situations in our life that we can bounce back from or learn from, right? Little mistakes or bumps along the way. So, Brett, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, about your background, and how you got into doing what you're doing today and what you're doing?
Yeah. So again, I grew up in a family, fell in love with real estate, the sticks and bricks of building houses in the Bay Area. This is the 80s and the 90s, the MC Hammer days, the Apple computer, the kind of the booming area of the Bay Area. And also saw how you can build wealth with, hands-on being an entrepreneur in real estate. So my brother and I were the first to graduate college, fast forward. So my parents were really just entrepreneurs and builders of houses, right? And owners of rental properties. But so we knew real estate was probably going to be in our future, but we didn't know quite how. And so fast forward, I played basketball in college on scholarship, played sports in high school, which helped me to build, be able to work on teams and figure out, specialties and all of those things. And then I took that knowledge with the education knowledge and applied that to a place called Marcus and Millichap, where I started to help people buy and sell multifamily properties. This is in Sacramento, where we focused at this point. And this is kind of the boom bust time of 2006. It was like really on fire. And then quickly in about 2008, things kind of really hit the fan, and, people were hurting, right? And so were we as brokers. And so I found myself in a situation where I'd been successful in school and basketball scholarships, and I was newly married, and things were going pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, financially, it was like a cliff, like a brick wall. And so we got humbled pretty quickly. And at this time, I did what every good, entrepreneur wannabe does, or real estate wannabe does. You get a side hustle. And my side hustle was Cheesecake Factory. And so by day, I'd work at Marcus Millichap, helping my clients work through their financial challenges, because you see, they were losing $1, $5, $10, $20, $50 million of real estate because a lot of them had too much debt, not enough liquidity or diversification, because they were doing the 1031, I call it 1031 shotgun wedding, right? When sometimes it's just not a great time to get married to a property if you have too much debt, not enough liquidity, and the cash flow doesn't make sense. And so we quickly started to ask ourselves, instead of just thinking about cash flow, let's talk about tax flow. Let's talk about debt flow. Let's see how these three can connect. And so we at Marcus and Millichap sat in an office. It was like a random Thursday morning. I'll never forget about it. We had this lunch and learn kind of thing that was coming up. And I was like, wow, this guy's going to be talking about something that sounds like it's an alternative to this 1031. And if what he's saying is true, this is like a Netflix of the old Blockbuster. But at the same time, I had to keep lights on. So I'm working at Cheesecake Factory. I'm ducking in and out of the office by day into nights and weekends, working 70-hour weeks. But we learned about the strategy, and I kept the lights on over there and did that for 2 years, kind of undercover, working in the Cheesecake Factory. We moved with my brother into a small condo, and the baby was on the way, so the pressure built. But I learned about the strategy, and everything changed from there, right? Where we could solve the pain of the challenge of the client and give them solutions, capital gains tax solutions, more than just one, than just the 1031. And then fast forward, I retired from the Cheesecake Factory. My wife and I have 5 kids. We moved away from Taxifornia about a year and a half ago. We're here in St. Augustine, Florida. And we're loving it here. And we help people build these capital gains tax exit plans. By the way, sometimes they'll do a 1031, and we love it when the deal makes sense. But oftentimes, especially in times like this, when you have negative arbitrage, where interest rates are higher typically than cap rates, and a lot of the value has been squeezed out of a lot of these assets, and the rents are kind of a little bit flat or just going up some, it's typically not the best time to 1031. It's just the opposite. And so this is when we come in and we help people build these plans. So that's kind of the long answer to the background and what we're doing now.
Yeah, I love that. And good to know that you're at Marcus. A couple of good friends of mine are at Marcus in the Chicago market, and um, you know, build some long-lasting relationships with some of those relationships, I'm sure. Hey, Brett, I'm in the multifamily space, right? I'm a syndicator. I buy multifamily. We partner with private investors to share in the profits. A lot of times, matter of fact, I was on the phone yesterday with an investor who said, "Hey, can I 1031?" And, the short answer is, yeah, if you have enough money, we'll jump through the hoops and set it up. But it sounds like you might have a solution to the traditional 1031. So why don't we talk about that and how that would work for your typical average investor?
Absolutely. And if I could just back up just a little more context here. So there's this big, hairy, audacious problem that's happening right now. It's the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. And it's known as the silver tsunami, or about $84 trillion that's going to transfer in the next 18 years, mostly by the baby boomers, of which there's about 80 million in the US alone, and about 10,000 are turning 65 every single day. And it's important to understand that 50% of the total net worth in America is tied to high-end primary homes, commercial real estate, and private equity, which is businesses. Now, these represent some of the most appreciated assets in the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the history of perhaps the world, right? Including, public stock, private stock. And it's subject to huge capital gains taxes. I'm saying somewhere between, 20, 25 to upwards of 50%, depending on depreciation, recapture, and where you're located at. And so you have to understand that that's the big problem everyone's facing. A lot of people are facing that they want to sell, but if they sell, about 25 to 50% of their proceeds are typically going to be wiped out. And so we want to figure out what's the big pain problem. I always say we're not in the business of selling multifamily syndications or multifamily properties or tax solutions. We are all in the business of solving problems. And to the extent we can solve the problem for the person that we're here to serve, man, does the value increase, and does the creativity open up? And so enter in the deferred sales trust. We believe this is the single most proven, flexible legal strategy you've never heard of. Now, this goes back 27 years, thousands of transactions. The most important thing, 29 no-change IRS audits. Most of the deals in California, okay? It literally has a perfect legal track record. But guess who doesn't want you to know about it, Mike? The commercial real estate broker. The 1031 exchange accommodator. Why is that? Well, how do they get paid? They get paid when Mike sells that 10, 20, $30 million apartment complex and 1031s into that next opportunity in that short time frame, and all the pressure's on, and maybe you make a bad decision, maybe you get a little bit over aggressive, and maybe there's capital calls going on now because the debt's reset. And you're going, man, I wouldn't have bought it if I didn't have this huge tax. In fact, this is Steve's story. I sat down with Steve in 2007 early. This is before I knew about the deferred sales trust. I said, Steve, you got $50 million of real estate. He goes, I know. He goes, I have 1031 exchanges. I built all this wealth. We said, Steve, you're in C&D assets and C&D locations. And yeah, I know. And I'm adding value and I'm renovating and all these things. Steve, do we think you should probably get out and get a little more conservative because things are a little bit frothy? Yeah, maybe. But if I sell, I get crushed with my taxes. And even if I sold into the 1031, I'm probably going to overpay. And so I'm just going to hold. Well, what happened to Steve over the next 3 years? In fact, it took 3 years for the market to crash, or as far as real estate values to go to their low, 08 to 011. Now, most of that was single family stuff, right? Multifamily had some, but for him, it was his multifamily portfolio. So he went on to lose all of his assets because he didn't feel like he could 1031, nor did he feel like he had to pay the tax. So he lost everything. And so he said, pain plus reflection equals progress, right? So like Ray Dalio talks about this. So he said, what was the pain point? Well, the pain point was capital gains tax, and it was also timing, and it was also too much debt. Well, how do we solve that? Well, we want to get timing on our side. We want to get debt free, and we want to get tax deferred. Okay. So what's the solution? And that's the deferred sales trust. And this is the beauty of this. You can sell an asset. You can defer the capital gains tax using the installment sale method plus a trust. So Mike, you and I know this, and probably your listeners do too, that you can do a seller carry back. It's like, as a buyer, you want to buy on terms. As a seller, you want to sell on terms in order to defer the tax. The buyer gets a little bit better, opportunity because he doesn't have to worry about the banks. So that IRC 453 is the tax code. This goes back nearly 100 years, is a proven strategy that everyone knows about. Nobody second guesses. But when you add a trust, it's like an element that takes it to a whole nother level. And here's the beauty, right? And I'll do an actual deal. We did a $13 million deal in San Diego. Okay. And this particular deal, they built it, a car wash, for about $3.5–4 million. And they were selling, and we were selling. This is right before interest rates shot up. Okay. So they knew it was a good time to sell. And we said, it's not a good time to 1031. And they're like, Brett, we've been waiting for you, right? Because we don't want to 1031 into a $13 million deal, equal or greater value, equal or greater debt. And the market's really high. I go, yeah, don't do it. And they go, Brett, I just found you on YouTube. This sounds way too good to be true. Like, I mean, this is really real? I'm like, yeah, it's really real. How does it work? Well, we're going to sell the asset first to the trust, and the trust is going to sell it to the ultimate buyer. So the key here is there's three parties: the seller, the trust, and a buyer. So step one, seller sells to the trust. Now, this is typically on the same day. Something like a simultaneous close, okay? In exchange for a promissory note. Step two, trust immediately sells it to the ultimate buyer. So guess what, Mike? If the trust bought and sold for $13 million, what's the gain at the trust level? 0. Okay. And if the buyer has taken title, he doesn't care how he took title. He took a clean title. He's good to go. He's gone. He buys it from the trust, and the trust lands $13 million, typically like Charles Schwab. Okay. Charles Schwab. And all of the money's tax deferred because the seller did a note carryback. Promissory notes owed back to him. So the money's owed back to him plus a rate of return, typically 6 to 9%, typically a 10-year note, and typically interest only or partial interest payments over the time period. And they can renew 10 years for 10 years for 10 years and keep going. But here's the big thing here. Instead of going back into real estate at high values, we diversified it. We put it into T-bills. We put it into hard money lending at 10% that we can get the money out in about 30 to 60 days. And we literally have watched the marketplace do this with hotels, multifamily, deals at a discount. And now we're dollar cost average, and we're buying on the way down, and we're buying. And we waited about a year and a half for the whole market to do all the stuff that it's done. And now we're just getting back into it, all tax deferred. Right, all tax deferred. And so this is the best kept secret that most people don't know of. This is the Netflix version to the Blockbuster. I'll pass it to you because I know I said a whole ton and you might have some questions.
Yeah. So could you tell that by the expression on my face? So how does this work with a lender? So if I'm buying a multifamily property and I have an investor who wants to invest in that multifamily deal, but they want to do a 1031, obviously with the 1031, I've got to get lender approval and they have to be on the loan and all of that. How does a DST work in that? So give me the structure from, I'm the owner operator of the real estate. I want to bring a private investor in who's 1031ing or who's trying to do a deferred tax transaction. Are you ready to skyrocket your investment portfolio and leave a legacy? Are you tired of inconsistent returns received in the stock market? Do you think that it may be time you take a look at alternative investment options? Passive investing in multifamily real estate could just be that option for you. With no tenants, trash, or toilets to take care of, but providing a solid return on an annual basis that outperforms traditional investing, including monthly and quarterly returns along the way. These lower risk, secure assets are a sure hedge against inflation. If you want to learn more about these types of opportunities, you can email me directly for a 15-minute consultation to see if you qualify. Just email me at mike@mikemorawski.com.
Yeah. So from your perspective as a commercial real estate syndicator, operator, or fund manager, one of the biggest challenges you face is it's very difficult, if not really cumbersome, to do a 1031 tenant in common. For a fund, forget about it. It doesn't even work for a fund. For an individual syndication, there are opportunities if properly structured. It's expensive, it's complicated. It's like a needle in a haystack sometimes with the timing of everything, and it typically needs to be bigger deals. So most of the commercial real estate syndicators that we work with, they don't accept 1031 money, okay? So here's the solution, the deferred sales trust. Once the money hits Charles Schwab is typically where it hits. it can go directly into your syndication, just like an LLC or a trust or any other entity. Why? Because it's not a 1031 exchange. The funds that are in the trust can be invested like any other investor. So there's in the Reg D, if you're looking at the Reg D, you want to really get into it. Any entity of which all of its equity owners are accredited investors qualifies. Okay. So we don't have to qualify under 1031. 1031 is blockbuster, right? It's 45, it's 180, it's equal or greater value. You have to go in the exact same thing, real estate to real estate. Ours, it can be sold. You can sell a primary home, a business, cryptocurrency, stock. And then once it's in the trust, it can go into whatever it wants. It can go into passive Reg D. It can go to active real estate with you. It can go into the stock market, it can go to cryptocurrency. It can dollar cost average. It's literally I would say Netflix, because remember Netflix, you could just turn on anytime. You don't have to rewind it. You don't have to return it. Is there ongoing fees? Yeah, we have ongoing fees too, right? It's just not blockbuster, right? And where you have to be, stuck in that rigid spot. So that's a short answer. I'll give you a little bonus answer here too. Tax flow is really important, right? Tax flow is the ability to offset cash flow, is how we define it. It's meaning you have like depreciation, you might do some cost seg, some straight line to offset. That's the beauty of real estate. The government can't force us to build and own real estate, but they can tax incentivize us to do that. That's part of why stocks are not depreciable, because anyone could just click a button. But Mike and me can go build or put together 300 unit apartment complex and improve the community, provide housing for people. It's a housing crisis. So they go, how are we going to Mike and Brett to do that? Well, it's through tax incentives. Right. So they tax incentivize people to do this. So what does that mean? They can let you depreciate. So the cash flow might come in at 100K and you might write off 25 to 50K of that, or maybe all of it, depending on if you do cost seg. And so this is the cool thing. Once the money's in the trust, you can partner with the trust through a joint venture LLC. Joint venture LLC. The trust can put the money in, where let's say, Mike, this was you say the trust owed you the money, but you start the LLC. The trust can put the money in, and it wants a preferred return. We typically mirror the promissory note, okay, which is really important. We keep it mirroring the promissory note. Let's say we had a $10 million note at 8%. You're going to partner with it. Let's say you put $3 million into an LLC at 8% preferred return. That 3 can go right into your syndication. Guess where the depreciation flows? To that LLC. But you had the majority ownership of that LLC, but you might put no money in. The trust was a silent partner, put all the money in. And now you're running that syndication, you're running your deal the same way you would have, but you're doing it in a tax-deferred, efficient way. We call that tax flow, cash flow, all coming together.
Interesting. So let's run a scenario, okay? So, well, first let me ask this: is there a minimum that an investor has to move in order to make it worthwhile?
Yeah, who is this for? 1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain per transaction. Now, if you had two at, one at 500 and one at 600, it was a short period of time. We could combine those two, right? But generally, it's 1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. Number one. Number two, you need to set it up prior to the close of escrow. Okay, this is very important. You're going to have language in the documents that give you the option to do this. Just like if you did a 1031, you need to have language in the documents before you close that you have the right to do a 1031 and have a QI all lined up. You get our company to help line up the trust, get everything in order so that the trust can receive it. And so you don't take constructive receipt. Really important. Now you say, well, Brett, I'm already passed, or my funds are at a qualified intermediary. We can also save a failed 1031 exchange. However, realize that not every QI company wants to cooperate with you, nor do they want you to use this. So some of them will just keep you in 1031 jail. So that's why we offer the best 1031 exit plan, okay? And you can learn about that by going to brettswarts.com. It gives you the ability to do a regular 1031, do a deferred sales trust as a backup plan, or a partial. Sometimes you do a little bit of both, 50-50, right? Sometimes you need a Delaware statutory trust to solve what's called debt over basis, which is kind of a whole nother topic. But ultimately, you don't want to be in 1D. 1D is just the 1031 company that only does the 1031. You want to be in 2D and 3D for figuring out ways to get, deferred sales trust, regular 1031, a Delaware statutory trust. And so that's the next level of I think, planning for this that most people just don't know how to do, or their broker just wants to keep them in the 1031 because that's how they get paid, right? And the money stays with them. But as these baby boomers transitions into more retirement and more passive and more diversification, the deferred sales trust is perfect because they can sell that $1, $3, $5, $10, $20 million deal where all of their net worth is in it. And then they can diversify into multiple multifamily syndications, which is our favorite, or multifamily lending, or they might do some mobile home park, or they might, to us, the primary way to invest is real estate, mostly multifamily, mobile home park. We like industrial, right? Those are kind of our favorite food groups. The stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, we've never been that excited about that, although we can also have a certified financial planner serve to diversify and get a balanced portfolio for people. And so it just kind of depends on the risk tolerance, depends on what you're doing. I know it's a longer answer than what you asked for, but that's essentially who it's for.
So the minimum movement's $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million net proceeds and $1 million gain, right? So what are you selling? Does it have $1 million net proceeds? Does it have at least $1 million gain? If so, thumbs up.
Okay. All right, great. So let's run a scenario. So let's say we have an investor. We'll call him Mac, and Mac has $1 million in an asset that he's selling, and he moves that into a trust. And there's no tax consequences for the movement of that money from the sale to the trust, correct?
So I'm going to correct you a little bit. He sells it to a third-party trust. Okay.
Who owns the trust?
Yeah, so it's not the traditional ownership that you might think of. There's 3 different trusts here. A traditional trust. There's an irrevocable trust, irrevocable trust, and then there's what's called a business trust. We're a business trust, okay? A traditional revocable trust is like where you help with probate to pass your assets to your kids, okay? The business trust is like a C Corp. So think about qualified intermediary. Do you own the qualified intermediary? No. If you did, it wouldn't be third party, it'd be taxable. So you sell and you give up some control for a period of time in exchange for to do the tax deferral. Do you own the IRA company or the 401k company? No. There's third party, IRA custodians, right? And 401k custodians. Okay. So this trust, the trustee company, that's our company. If you wanted to say who technically owns the trust, the Capital Gains Tax Solutions, our company does. But these are single entity trusts that only do business with the seller. They never do business with anybody else. They never commingled. Second, you are owed all the money back, right? Plus a rate of return before anything else happens, right? And there's fees that are along the way, but that's all the rights and protections. So you're going from being an owner of the asset to a lender, right? And so if you own the trust, it'd be taxable, right? And so this is our role. We serve as the trustee, Capital Gains Tax Solutions, but it's got to pay you back the 10 million plus the 8% before anything happens, right? And along the ways we collect our fees. So that's what creates the business purpose here, right? And that's probably one of the biggest objections to have to overcome, right? It's too good to be true. Is it legal? We kind of covered that. We can cover that more. Who's the trustee? What kind of controls are in place and how much control do I need to give up? But then I remind people that you do it with the 1031 exchange. You do it with an IRA and the 401k. It's different because you still own that. But in this scenario, you can also kind of like self-direct, which is kind of cool. Right? You can partner with the trust like I was talking about before. So you can literally close and say, Brett, I want to go buy this multifamily complex over here. Great. Let's do that. You form an LLC. You open up the LLC bank account. You partner with the trust, and it's kind of like a self-directed IRA. Now, the trustee has to approve of the investments, but the odds of me saying no are pretty low. In fact, I love multifamily, right? But if I didn't have that, that distinction, if I was related to you, Mike, or as a part of your family, it wouldn't work, right? If I was an employee, it wouldn't work. So you've got to have that distinction. But remember, 40% of the sale, if you did a $10 million deal in Manhattan Beach, it's the government's. $6 million is your money, $4 million is the government. So the government says, if you follow this guideline with this thing, and then great, you can defer the money. So hopefully that answers the question and relieves some of the concerns with that.
Yeah, interesting. And where are you? You're talking about a lot of money that's transferring hands over the next 18 years. I think is the number that you said on it. Was a lot of that money created in real estate, or was it in all other business models?
Yeah. So remember, 50% of the total net worth in America is tied to high-end primary homes, commercial real estate, and private equity. And so those 3 asset classes represent 50% of the total net worth. Now, the top 3% of net worth own commercial real estate, right? So that, to me, it's 2/3 of that 50% is real estate. So the answer is yes, it's mostly real estate.
Interesting. And do we have to have lender approval with a DST?
No. So this is the beauty of this. Like, this is Just like if you did a 1031, you don't need a lender to approve that. You're sending, the lender's going to get paid off at closing. Yeah. So there's no restrictions to using an installment sale method with a trust or using a 1031 exchange. The lender they have nothing to do with that. They just want their money, or they want to buy that. Now the buyer coming in, as long as they get title free and clear, that's what the lender wants, right? Is there any clouds on title? Is there anything they're going to be, they're getting insurance, they're getting these things. The buyer's buying and getting it clean. That's completely gone, and the trust receives the money. So they've never had any issues with the lenders, if that's what you're asking.
Right. And is there a solution for an investor who might not have $1 million that he's moving?
Yeah. So our company's called Capital Gains Tax Solutions, plural with an S. And the reason it is that is because there's, people who can do cost seg in the same year. We're working with a deal right now. In fact, he sold a $3.9 million business sale, no basis, has about $1 million or so of tax liability. He closed it 3 months ago. He called me yesterday and said, "Hey, can you help me, Brett?" I said, "Well, it's too late because you sold yesterday for the deferred sales trust. However, we can help you invest into a multifamily syndication, which has bonus depreciation. As long as you do it within 2024 and you can get the bonus of 60%, you might have to put $3 million to get the $1 million to offset. Or we can, so he's like, "Great, show it to me." And so we sent him an opportunity. He's looking at it now. And so that is my go-to when either it's too late. The challenge with that, it's really hard for someone to put, 60, 70, 80, 90% of their capital into one deal. It's not diversified, especially if it's passive. That's why we would lean on the deferred sales trust, so we can dollar cost average and dollar cost average with the timing as well. But he's like, "You know what, Brett? It sounds better than paying the $1 million of tax." I said, "Well, great. We'll look at that." So that's my go-to if it's, or if it's too small. Like we've had clients that call and like, "I got a $500,000 deal and about $100,000 of tax." I'm like, "It's too small for us." But if you put about $250,000, maybe $300,000 into a passive investment, you could offset that $100,000.
Interesting. So where is your perfect client coming from right now?
Yeah. So I think it starts with, 50% of it's real estate, 30% is business sales, about 10% is cryptocurrency. Okay. We actually feel the biggest opportunity, especially for multifamily syndicators and operators for raising capital, is through the exit of highly appreciated Bitcoin, tax defer it through the DST, and turn around and go right into the syndication. Like it's the best opportunity because real estate's generally like this right now. Bitcoin's like this. Right. And they want diversification. And so it always starts with what are the desires, what matters most to the client, what are the needs, what are the wants, and what are they trying to accomplish, right? And we go back to tax flow, cash flow, and debt flow, right? We look at their risk tolerance, we walk them through it. But yeah, I'd say it's, I just did an $8 million business sale in Colorado. We just did a $6 million in South Florida. We did a lot of some land banking where people banked the land, or they tied it up. They did land entitlement work, and we did like a $5 million deal in Texas. We did an $8.3 million deal in Palo Alto, Arizona, apartment complex for $2.5 million in New York, Connecticut. We did a dentist in Connecticut. We did another dentist in New Jersey. So so it's really anyone who's selling a highly appreciated asset. I mean, to be honest, and it's all over the country.
It's interesting. And the trust, when you set up the trust, I want to just circle back to that issue for a minute. Who is the trustee, the beneficiary, the owner of? You are. Okay.
I'm the trustee. Yeah. So I'm the trustee, but this is a complex business trust. So it's not what you typically would think. Most people, when they think trust, they just think revocable trust, right? So we actually have two types of trust. I'll talk about the first and then the second. Number one, think of it like a C Corp that you sold it to, but this C Corp owes you all the money plus a rate of return. So just like a bank, if they loan you money, are they concerned on the house that if you don't pay, that they can't foreclose and take the asset? No. You have all the rights and protections of a lender. So do they care that they're not the beneficiary of the house? No. Because if you don't pay, they foreclose and take back their equity, right? That is the definition of being a lender, right? So that is first thing to understand, right? So nothing loses without your approval or your signature. Everything is mapped out. We work with some of the best financial advisors in the country and multifamily operators and syndicators like yourself, Mike, right? And we build an expert team. We call it building a capital gains tax exit plan, but really we're building a capital gains tax exit team, right? A team to help execute this. Yeah, so we're the third-party trustee. There's also a third-party tax preparer, full profit and loss statement. This third-party tax attorney does all the legal work. That's the audit defense. Third-party holder of the capital, typically Charles Schwab, until it goes to like another syndication or a different deal. Yeah, third-party certified financial planner, right? If we bring the financial planner in. So there's a lot of people that hold each other accountable, that have access to see, and so it's a robust team, because people go, oh my gosh, like, well, again, we have the controls in place. If you use the QI company before, we'll work with you through that. So I hope that answers the question on that one.
Say it again.
I hope that answers the question on that one.
It did 100%. So Did I see you hold up a book there? Do you have a book that you've written?
Yeah. Here it is.
Great. And how do people get that?
You go to Amazon. It's the bestseller on Amazon. It's called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. We call it the proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling any asset of any kind for yourself or your client. So you can check that out. We have people like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book. I did mention we're going to touch on the DST 2.0 in case people are wondering, and maybe that's okay, Mike. I can touch on that.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, let's start with the bigger problem of why we would use this, and it has to do with estate tax, okay? So estate tax, or the death tax, a lot of people perhaps forget or get confused. They think that the stepped up basis and the 1031 swap until you drop is the end all be all, and then we're tax free. That's not the truth, and it's not the full truth, right? Your capital gains tax free if they do keep stepped up basis along. By the way, Biden is proposing to take that away. He's also proposing to take capital gains tax rates from 20 to 44%. He's also proposing to cap the 1031 exchange at 1 million on a married couple. A lot of things that are on the potential, right? Let's see if that actually happens. But the point is, even if they keep step up basis in place, death tax is a huge issue. If you have a net worth of 12 to 13 million married as of 2026, right now the exemptions are like 26, 27. They're going to cut in half at least in 2026, potentially lower. We'll see. That being said, what happens when you die? And let's say you're worth $112 million. Okay. Now you go, I'm not worth $112 million, but just easy math on this one. Okay. So Mike, if you had $112 million of multifamily properties in Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, La Jolla. Okay. So those three places, you're debt free, you're fully depreciated, and you're like, man, I'm just going to die, give it to my kids for a stepped up basis. And, they'll walk away tax free. Nope. They would give, and if you're married, they'd give you about a $12 million exemption. Maybe it's 14 in 2026, but the other 100 million would be hit with a 40% death tax.
Wow.
Boom. This is the government's biggest mousetrap. And it's kind of like the jugular, right? And so everyone has a 1031 swap until you drop stepped up basis plan until Mike Tyson or the tax man punches you in the face, right? And so then you got to be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Well, here's the solution. Mike would say, Mike, why don't we sell that $112 million worth of real estate before you die? It's really important. Let's move it into what's called the DST Plus, or Deferred Sales Trust Plus. Now, here's the cool thing. No charity, although we love charity. If you want to give a charity, that's cool. It's optional with the Deferred Sales Trust, but no charity is required. Number two, no life insurance is required, which guess what, Mike, can be really expensive. And number three, no gifting is required. So you don't have to try to have 50 kids to gift it away. See, most people run out of time. They run out of kids. Right? Life insurance is too expensive or really expensive, and they don't necessarily want to give it all away to charity. And so our solution is remarkable in that in one sale and one day, does take a sale to a third-party buyer for $112 million, does take the trust being set up properly. The trust can receive that $112 million. It's forever outside of your taxable estate. And here's, I think, to answer your other questions, or I think you're going to like this. Your children can be the beneficiaries of this trust.
Nice.
Okay. And upon your passing and your wife's passing, it passes estate tax free. Okay. It also passes capital gains tax free. But here's the kind of the kicker here. While you're alive, as you receive payments, it's going to be partial interest and partial principal, which means you're going to pay cap gains tax and interest, which is not ideal, which is why we often do a 1.0 for at least 10 million on a married couple per year. And then the rest can go into the other one. So these are some a little bit advanced planning we're talking about here. But I just want everyone to know what's possible. But more than that, I want to know, what is your challenge? Is your challenge estate tax? Well, it's a simple equation. You go, what's our net worth? What's our total net worth? And then number two question is, how much is inside the taxable estate? Number three is, okay, what's our plan to get it out? All right. So very, very important that you know answer of all those three questions. And we're here to help. We do no cost consultations with people all the time on these topics. And we also work on a conditional basis with all of this. So if you want to explore it, no cost, no obligation, jump on with myself, one of my team members. We will compare, contrast, strategize with you, hopefully give you a clear outcome. If your deal doesn't close or you end up not wanting to use the trust, no problem. You don't owe us anything. And that's part of what I want to offer everybody. If you're interested, you can go to brettswarts.com or capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to get started.
Interesting. Brett, thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. Tell people again how they get a hold of you.
Yeah, so brettswarts.com will have all of the best 1031 exit plan. It'll have access to the book. It'll have, my Instagram, my Facebook, my LinkedIn, that kind of thing, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Or if you want to just dive right into, doing the planning for your exit, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Any final thoughts that you would leave an investor with today, whether they were, whether they had $100,000 they were starting out with, or whether they had $1 million that they were working with?
Yeah. So the guy with $100,000, if you're looking to be an entrepreneur, invest into yourself and to that business, before you invest passively, and try to get that to a 250 or 500 to 750, $1 million of revenue per year or income per year, right? The person who probably has all that and is perhaps has $1 million to invest, then I would say now's the time to get into a multifamily, mobile home park, distressed real estate. Now in the next 6 to 12 months, I think is the best buying opportunity we've seen in a decade. So do that. You might dollar cost average $250 on each of those for 4 or 5 deals to diversify. But those are some of the things that I would be looking at. And then in the meantime, I would sit in lending funds that pay about 10%, and you get the money on about 30 days that are tied to multifamily or housing that have never lost a dollar and that do amazing. So versus just the securities market, which is paying, or T-bills about 5. So those would be my initial thoughts.
Interesting. Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoy your weekend, and good luck in your ventures and what you do. Hey, everybody, thanks for being here again this weekend. I hope today was enlightening and insightful for you. Take some of this information to heart. Reach out to Brett and get some information about your personal situation and how can he help you to, eliminate and defer those taxes for yourself to help you grow and help you grow your family's financial future. Good luck, everyone. Have a great weekend. We will see you next week.